RTD Live Talk, we are officially live for this Wednesday evening stream, the 29th day of the month of April. And as you guys can tell from the very title of this, the unemployment surge is actually just beginning, in my personal opinion. And I'm going to lay out some information as to why I believe that is, especially having a chance to listen to Mr. Jerome Powell today, lay out his case for how he will continue to be more than accommodative to keep this economy going. Therefore, adding more problems to the very same thing that they're trying to avoid. So we're going to dive into that as always. Want to welcome those first-time viewers. Let me know in the chat where you're watching from. We'd love to acknowledge your presence. And for those that are returning back for another live stream, I appreciate you for joining us this evening. Let me know where you're watching from and what's going on in your neck of the woods. We'd love to find out what is going on in your world. So let me check in via chat, and then I'll lay out a couple articles and then open up the phone lines, and I would love to hear from you guys. And so we got Jasmine says, you got this learning. Okay, can't wait. Okay. Peter, I appreciate that. Peter says, Mike is super smart and articulate. I appreciate that. I'm a work in progress. Mayweather Financial Group says, this is going to turn helicopter money into jumbo jet cargo money next month. Yeah, I can get down with that. Lamar says, I'm getting my weight up. I just put another order in. There you go, man. So yeah, after watching, I watched the entire Federal Reserve briefing on why they decided to do nothing, but yet provide confidence in the system that they will be there to backstop anything. So if there's any problems, they got it covered. They're going to try to flood, to clog up the leaks that's occurring in our finance and our global monetary system. And then I want to share with you towards the very end of the chat of the discussion, the virtual discussion they had. One of the reporters asked him about what about savers in this current environment with 0% interest rates, and basically Jerome Powell was like, "Oh well, for the greater good, those people who save in that particular method of putting funds aside and expecting to grow, they're going to lose out." But then he said they can make it up in the illusion, and that's my 2 cents in there. But they can make up the lack of gains earned on depositing in their bank accounts, with their net worth increasing, with the house pricing going up, as well as their 401ks. So he listed those two overinflated bubbles that are about to pop as well. So I'm thinking like, wow, like, man, I wish a lot of people were listening to that from this perspective of just being a complete skeptic of anything that comes from them, that person's mouth. But anyway, Peter says, I'm considering on getting in vegan garden just now. Well, keep us informed on how that turns out for you. McLovin from Las Vegas. So we got Lance from Austin, Spirit in the building, G. Graham. Okay, Excalibur. Okay, so a fair amount of people here. I want to get straight to the point. We got F Home 2C, Ola from Hawaii, Starvation Nation. What's going on in Hawaii? I'm curious to find out what's life like on the Isle. All right, so let me get into some articles here to lay out my case for why I believe that unemployment is just actually getting started. And so already we've surpassed all prior recessionary job losses in numbers. And I'm going to actually start off with this graph here. And so this is, of course, it's outdated, old. But let me share the screen here. So this is what we're up against. These are the statistics that we are up against as far as based upon history. And so right now we're in the front. We got a front row seat to the greatest monetary experiment ever created. And we're witnessing how it implodes. And it starts with central banks. Basically, they're going to allow this. They're going to be overly accommodative at the same time that our government is being more than accommodative with the unemployment concept, to where they will disincentivize employers for actually calling back staff, especially if they know that if they have issues, they can get liquidity from any type of special window of lending, to where they don't necessarily need to go full swing ahead with opening their doors to get back to work. But I'm going to dive into that. So here's some numbers here. And of course, this is not up to date. So this is, as of right now, I assume in May, perhaps we'll get an updated version of unemployment level based upon the Federal Reserve numbers. But as we see, every gray bar is a recession all the way back, of course, 1950. And so every time we reach a gray bar, or as the unemployment starts, that's, was it 2 quarters into that spike upwards is when they announced that there's a recession. And so already the highest we have in this graph here is 15 million, 219 million from 10 plus years ago, great financial crisis. And so as of now, we were starting to spike up, but yet if you zoom in here, it hasn't been updated yet because April will be the revealer of how severe this really is. And so as of right here, as of March, beginning of March, we were at 7 million unemployed. Of course, we know, go right to the next graph here. Let me get this to you here. Okay, so here's an interesting article here. It talks about, this was as of Monday. It says U.S. unemployment could surge to 16% on this current pandemic. And then there's another article here. It talks about it will definitely go beyond 20. And then another article says that at this current point, we can't really trust what numbers we're being given because we don't really know. And so let me find these. I thought it was very interesting how benefits actually data. So it says our millions. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, so you kind of get where I'm going with this. So according to the data given to us, it's not really even indicated here of how severe it is now, but we know as of right now, 26 million and counting. So here's an article I want to actually use as a guide into what we're going to be talking about. And so this article here talks about how states are being overwhelmed with the amount of claims that's being filed week by week. So as of right now, we're 26 million, 26.4 or something like that. I saw million as of last week. So by this Friday, we might definitely be at 30 million-ish. And so every week, it looks like there will be an additional 4 million or so added on. And so now you see the rush to get the economy going again. But then again, I don't think that's a part of the plan. And then I'm going to share with you why I believe that is. And so a lot of the narrative that we're being told is that the economy is shut down. Therefore, all the businesses, they're being forced to have to close their doors or whatnot. And then certain states are better off than others. Okay. But yet, from a medical standpoint, there's more than enough information out there now that this states how overblown all this is. It's serious, but it's been way overblown intentionally. The mainstream media is doing a good job of scaring the heck out of people. And so everywhere I go now, I see people walking their dogs and driving their cars with masks on. So it looks like we succumb psychologically to this invisible enemy that we're up against. And so where does this leave us as far as the very backbone of our country? The backbone of our country happens to be in the working class, those that are, quote unquote, labeled the middle class. And right now, an overwhelming majority of those individuals are not able to work. And it doesn't help that with this PPP, which is for whatever reason, it's not the typical response based upon prior recessions of governments basically being there to help. Okay, they gave one little payroll, $1,200 to $500, whatever, as an incentive to get people through 8 weeks. They know it's not enough. So what they've done, they've tacked on an additional $600 to the employment payroll, which for the majority of the lower end spectrum of the employment force, that pretty much is their current income, if not greater than what they were making. And so I've already heard a lot of stories about how people are just saying, hey, what's the point of going back to work when I'm making more staying home? So you have on two fronts here. This is why I believe the unemployment surge is just beginning, because now that the Federal Reserve, as of today, Jerome Powell, was very vocal in sharing his thoughts that no matter what, let me see, I gotta get my articles here. And so Federal Reserve today, I watched the whole thing from beginning to end, and he basically mentioned that this is the worst economy, period. But yet, in order to get back to a robust recovery, as he used the word robust recovery several times, he mentioned that they will do pretty much everything and anything, and even furthering their toolkit usage at this current moment. And so think about this from a corporation standpoint. If you are a business, and especially a publicly traded company, and the entire 10 years, your growth market cap wise of your shares of your company was all led by corporate buybacks, it's been frowned upon in the light as of now. So what it looks like the Federal Reserve has done by opening up all these additional and new windows, they are basically trying to find new ways to funnel currency to these companies and hedge funds and all those entities that are of course, basically strapped for cash right now because of all that debt that they've taken on to buy back their shares. So the Federal Reserve, by referencing today that they would do anything and everything in their toolkit to buy treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, and you name it, they're going to try to prop up everything that's basically afloat, that's floating, and so that they can continue to inflate this current bubble. So what will that do? That will basically mean that the Federal Reserve will provide more than enough liquidity into these same companies that are no longer able to prop up their shares directly, which will also provide a sense of comfort for corporations to where they will not necessarily be wanting to go out and rehire their entire workforce, just because you don't really need that headache or burden on bringing people back and having to deal with all the regulations on the social distance and physical distance and all those new things that we're going to be getting used to, while you have to now also probably increase their pay and all those things that are part of the old system, which I believe they want to get away from. And so I don't see a lot of people being called back, and majority of the working class small mom and pop stores, unfortunately, they will not be provided the total amount of liquidity needed to keep their doors open. On top of that, most of those mom and pop places that are historically known for being your local places where you love to go for a family-friendly environment, those places will not have the same type of culture anymore, because you won't be able to have a certain amount of people within your store or within your restaurant. So that right there changes the dynamic of what a small business can do, to where at the end of the day, I think small businesses, certain ones, will not even bother to try to reopen just because of the headache. Like regulations that's going to come as a result of all this stuff we're dealing with now will disincentivize businesses from wanting even to open their doors. So therefore, there's going to be a large amount of people still unemployed. And then to take it even further, with the government situation now, them being over accommodative by offering more than what I believe a person should be able to receive without losing that desire to go work for them, or to go earn and to work, more people will become comfortable within the next several months of getting this aid from the government directly through this PPP loan situation, so that when it's time to even go back to work, I'd imagine a lot of people will definitely opt out. And then when they have to, because it's cut off, then the majority of the employers will have already reshaped and restructured how they're going to run their business moving forward in this new economy that's being built right now as we speak. So with all that right there, that's just basically saying that right now, because of monetary policy and fiscal policy being overly accommodative at this current moment, in the beginning of this crisis, when numbers are still rolling out as to how severe it will be, I imagine they're setting a tone that it will make it so that a lot of corporations will not be in need of bringing people back. So therefore, we're going to always have to deal with the adjustment of the workforce, but that's a part of the plan as well. And so with all that being said, I laid out a lot right there. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully I share that in a way where people can kind of see where I'm going with that. Is because of monetary policy being more overly accommodative to businesses, because as Jerome Powell was very adamant today in mentioning that they're going to make sure that there's more than enough credit available for all types of consumption. His goal is to make sure people are back out and about at some point consuming. That's all they care about, is people debiting and crediting, so that the bubbles continue to inflate. And that's what their main objective is, while the government is trying to paper over this problem, creating a whole new payment processing in the meantime. Because remember, as I mentioned from the last live stream, come January, the Boost Act is what I would imagine, President Trump, give or take his second term, will definitely want to put out there, as we still continue to deal with this health situation, which is definitely not going anywhere. I believe that they want this thing to last, so that it can help reassure and reaffirm what they are trying to do with this new world order that they're trying to, usher us into. So, okay, so with that out the way now. So we hitting 30 million tomorrow. Yeah, I don't doubt it. We hitting 30 million, and then so it's going to be 4 to 5 million every week. And so there will be no way of completely reopening the economy, because I believe that the powers that be, they don't want that, because if they open up the economy, it'll help Trump's narrative of, that we're going to recover, we're going to have all this, and also it's going to play towards Jerome Powell's narrative of, once again, the mandate, as he said again, is maximum employment and what is price stability is the two mandates. And I'm thinking like we did 11 years of unprecedented monetary policy. They began to tighten that and realize they couldn't, and the unemployment was already at an all-time low, and job stability prior to the last 3 months was supposedly good, and they still were near zero and could not raise rates. So we're at zero permanently until the system cracks, and then an emergency effort to reinstate or to basically reinstate confidence back into this the Federal Reserve system. Then they'll have to raise rates, and at that point it'll be too late, I believe, because all the activity happening out west, somebody's going to come up with that second alternative, which will become the preferred alternative well before then. But anyway, so let me get back to the chat. And as always, let me if you got any thoughts, any questions, feel free to chime in. And so let me go ahead and just open this up a little bit and get some thoughts. And so for those that might just be joining us now, I try to lay it out why I believe that unemployment is just getting started. And it's going to be a result of too much policies from the monetary side as well as the fiscal side. And because of the fact that people will not want to go back to work, more than enough people will get extremely comfortable, and then they will probably cut it off at some point. And then at that point, the corporate structure will have changed to where most people won't be needed back in the workforce. So, yeah. Anyway, okay, me caught up in the chat here. It says, greeting, get my weight up, big fat. Okay. Bill says 50 million unemployed, and they're flying jets around to get everyone to wave their flags. Everything's great until it's not. Mark W says, don't mess with Texas. Ohio's open up May 6th. And of course, here in Michigan, our governor extended it till May 15th, as if like that's that cut on point where you can just, everybody go back to your normal day and activity. And so the biggest problem, I think, out of all this will be that we have psychologically now, the majority of the population, those that have concerns for their health, which are predominantly the older generation. And then you have the younger generation that really don't take this serious as much, I'd imagine, based upon all the activity we're seeing out in Florida with the beaches being crowded. But yet, from this point on out, until people have a sense of security and confidence that this health situation will not be the reason why they fall victim to it, there's going to always be this physical distancing concept in our minds. So people will always walk next to somebody and want to cross the street. Or I think psychologically now, people are well convinced that 6 feet is an established range where you want to fall within. So think about this. All the grocery stores now, from where we gather here in Michigan, now have a controlled structure to them where you got signs at the beginning of the rows, and then you got arrows pointing this way only. So it's like they're directing traffic in stores now. So we're being conditioned to adapt to what is labeled as what's in our best interests of having 6 feet between individuals, always wear your mask indoor and outdoor. And so all that right there is doing a good job of grooming us to where whatever comes out, whatever comes from the powers that be, we're going to believe it, all along them trying to accommodate us financially, destroying our global system. So this stuff right here is beyond real. And so Pabar says the real problem is the oil situation. So yeah, so that's a whole nother can of worms. So there's more than enough dominoes that we all can point to, which will signal to us that, as Jerome Powell was talking about, doing everything possible within our toolkit until we have a robust recovery, trying to create a robust recovery. And when I was listening to that word robust recovery, I'm thinking the first thing came to mind is a robust reset. So everything the Federal Reserve is doing right now, it only puts us further in a pinch globally to where all confidence will be lost in the monetary system, and the reserve status that we currently have had privilege to for so long is being diluted to where if the Federal Reserve has made it their mandate to provide more than enough liquidity in the form of loans and all types of things that they've proven over the last 10 years that they cannot unwind. Like as the Federal Reserve unleashes all this legalized counterfeiting, as I say, there's no way they can there's no way they can reel that back in. So it's all permanent in nature based upon the last Great Recession. It showed us that they could not unwind their balance sheets. And so from the looks of it now, 6.7. It's going to be 7 by the end of this month, and then 8 probably, come June or something like that. So the current trajectory of this global monetary system, it will not recover. Like that, we were supposed to be in recovery up until a year ago when they started hiking rates. But yet you cannot take away the heroin from a drug addict without there being some severe consequences. And unfortunately, the ultimate consequence lies in our national currency. So as I've always said before, the Federal Reserve note will end up at the end of the day being your greatest financial liability. What I mean by that is if your entire world is solely dependent upon receiving a promise that's denominated in something labeled as a dollar or Federal Reserve note, you're going to have problems. And then, as I started off by saying, for those that might just be joining us, one of the questions that someone asked Jerome Powell towards the end of his little spiel was, what about savers? What about those setting funds aside in their bank accounts? With this zero interest rate policy, they're not benefiting whatsoever. And he, you could tell like his speech now is getting a little bit more hesitant because he's trying to fish for that politically correct response to give the public, but nobody's buying it. But once again, all the reporters are asking him the watered down questions. But yet he was like, well, when you look at it from what's going on now, we're at unprecedented times, and we got to think about the whole. We got to think about the entire system now. We can't really concern ourselves with the savers right now, and so that's where we're at right now. But on the good note is, they're going to see some gains as the economy recovers. Their house will go up in value as well as their 401k. And I'm thinking like, wow, like he's telling people that their net worth should solely be dependent upon the assets, so-called assets that they park their currency in. That's going to also experience some gyrations because of the volatility of the oil market and all the other things out there, the debt market, the derivatives market, pretty soon. And I saw an article that Dave Kranzler put out there about Scotia Bank, one of the oldest price-setting, one of the oldest metals price-setting entities on the planet, is getting out of the game, and they're going to be out of the game officially by January 2021. They want to unwind all their books, and so I'm thinking like, well, damn, like everybody running. Like I remember talking about before over the last couple of years now, how all the I think about 5 or 6 banks that were in charge of setting the spot price for metals, they've all one by one trying to sell their accounts or exit out. So now we're down to basically not many of the original players that were for hundreds of years setting the price of metal. So they obviously know what's coming. And so what that tells me is that they're running from the day of reckoning. That day of reckoning will obviously show up in the price in denominated and Federal Reserve notes of what it costs you to go get you some weight. Okay, so let me get back into the chat. I feel like I'm ranting too much. So as always, let me get the phone lines open so somebody can call me. Because if you don't call, I tend to go on my little rants and of trying to share information that I can get carried away sometimes. Because I just get so caught up in all the lies we've been fed. And all it's doing is destroying confidence all the way. So as always, for those that are highlight that Rethinking a Dollar or super chat stand out so I can see if there's any questions. Because if not, it looks like just some back and forth. Dollars aren't good for saving, even if rates are way higher. Never beats inflation since Volcker. Bamboo, very true. So here's another thing. As I've always mentioned before, the Federal Reserve note, as we have it today, we're very fortunate at this current moment to be in this country at this time as things unwind, because the Federal Reserve note will be the last currency that gives way. And so it's going to always have a sense of usage in the meantime, but yet when it comes to storing it and saving it, like to set aside notes for a long periods of time, I'm saying long as like 5 years for sure, I would imagine you won't be able to do much with that when it's time to actually move that thing. Because also, and I didn't mention this, but we're also in the transition period of the new payment method that's coming. And so I posted an article today, let me pull it up here, about how there's 32 bills, 32 bills that have been put forth by Congress in regards to the blockchain and cryptocurrency, just that lingo. And so for those that are interested, visit the RTD rethinkingdollar.com, and I post articles throughout the day there. And so here's an article here. Congress has now introduced 32 crypto blockchain bills. And this little graphs here gives you an idea as to what exactly the primary bills have been about. And so when it comes to the U.S. central bank digital currency, that's 6%. So it's two major bills out there that will deal with that. And that stuff is around the corner. Like it's a part of their game plan. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about that, you can find that at the Rethinking Dollar page. And so let me see here. I saw a thought there. Metho Nelson says, "Don't fight the Fed." LOL. Great point, and I'd agree. You don't have to fight the Fed because based upon their current behavior, they're going to self-destruct. So all you have to do is I think Gregory Mannarino mentions about, be your own central bank. My thing is just bet against the Fed, bet against your central bank. And the way you do that is basically remembering the difference between money and currency. If you have that as your foundation of, what you're storing your economic energy in, I think you'll be well okay because you'll know that there's no future in fiat. So I missed a call. Let me get you back on here. So give me a call back and I will get you on here. So that's definitely, so you don't have to fight. That's the thing, like rethinking dollar now for several years. I sometimes even when I hear Jerome Powell speak, I watch all the Fed meetings. I read all the reports. It's like, to me, it's like, man, at what point, apart from me trying to reach out to new people who don't know, a lot of the stuff I'm hearing from a lot of commentators, it's relatively all the same, just given different ways. But it's like, we know the end result. But we got a call here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from? Thought I had somebody there. Give me a call back, and as you're calling, let me put your phone or the computer or whatever on mute, and then go from there. So let me get back to the chat. Questions, thoughts. What's going on in your world? Let me hear. I cashed in my 401k about 20 years ago. I've seen this coming for a long time. Yeah, and so when Jerome Powell tells you that that's something that you can rely on in a zero interest rate environment, that's basically saying that the reason he can say that is because the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, SP, they're going to go up by default as a result of all the accommodative policies. The toolkit will make sure that those markets go up nominally, but yet it can't go up forever. And when it does correct, it's going to be the correction of all times, because that correction will be the catalyst directly into the reset of whatever will be rolled out. Because think about this. Like, I think it was, who was it? Somebody mentioned about, the housing market will correct and the equities market will correct. When it's official, they're looking at 70, 80%. Now, think about this. Who in a right mind going to have confidence to get back into the same system unless something is new? But caller, let me have you mute your phone or your thing for me. Okay. Must be a false line there. So, so anyway, let me get some more calls, and I would love to talk to you. Bubble. Yeah, all bubbles burst. You can't inflate a bubble to infinity. That is a given. And a bubble is simply meaning that it's a unbalanced. Okay, great example. I think Trader Steph mentioned this, that, if water is being unleashed in alarming amounts, it has to go somewhere. And so they're purposely steering it towards certain asset classes to keep the illusion of everything is fine. And so the housing market and equity market, the bond market, all those markets that are finding all the currencies finding its way to that side, and it's inflating it, and it's really elevating those markets to the point where it looks like the illusion that there's value there, there's true value there, but really there's just been more currency added to it, increasing the price of them, not necessarily value. Like, think about the housing market. Outside of the houses that's being built now, most of the houses are beyond affordable. And so you think about this: if there was no credit, if credit was not readily available and easily available at basically zero borrowing cost now, who would actually be able to afford a median-sized house based upon the fact that income has never been at a level that could, keep pace with inflation? And so basically, you remove credit, you get a chance to find out what the value of a lot of things really is. If there was no corporate buybacks for 10 years, the Dow Jones would definitely not be at 24,000, having corrected to 18,000, was it like a couple of weeks ago? So you see how everything is artificial in nature and manipulated, and it's all a part of just being plugged into this matrix. Like they're doing a great job of keeping everybody distracted and attention this way over a health scare, while over here they're trying to prop up and keep afloat while everything is crumbling. And unfortunately, as I started off talking about, the unemployment plays a major part in that, because all central bankers, all central banks in general, they run governments into massive amounts of debt, to the point where the governments rather are forced to have to create austerity, which is basically cutting stuff, cutting pensions, cutting this, cutting pay, cutting all the government provided stuff, while all along making the cost of existing within that country extremely expensive, because most people, unfortunately, are not able to be in a position where they benefit from this. It's only a small few, per 1 and 5% of the population actually are able to. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Alan, calling from North Carolina.
Alice from North Carolina. How you doing, my friend? Give me some good news.
Well, the good news is I went to the bank about 3 weeks ago and I got all my money out before all this happened. I'm a new caller.
Okay.
I'm a new caller, and I've kind of been listening to you for a few weeks, and for some reason what you said resonated with me. And I had like tens of thousands of dollars in the bank, just sitting there. And when I went there, the bank manager, she told me, well, it's going to take us a day to get all that. She said, do you mind taking it in 20s? Because we can't give you all that in hundreds. And I said, yeah, I'll take it however you get it. And she said, well, we can get it to you, but we have to order it from the Federal Reserve. And the funny thing is that once I got it the next day, I did get it all, every single bit, but it took me about an hour for them to just count it all. Because like I said, it was tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And they had to put it in a big box. And before I left, she said, are you sure you want to take this? Because you're not going to be protected. There's a lot of risk with you taking it home. So it's better to keep it in the bank. And I said, well, I don't know. Something I heard the other night from a guy on internet resonated with me. He says, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And then a couple days later, that's when all this craziness started going on, and now you can only get so much out of the bank at a time. So that's the good news. I got all my money out in time, and now you can only get out like maybe $2,000 at a time, or in some places you go, you can only get like $1,000 out. Yeah. And so it kind of caused me to think, once you put your money in the bank, it's really not yours, because. And here's another thing. She asked me. She said, "Well, what do you want the money for?" I said, "Well, you didn't ask me what the money for, why I wanted to deposit the money when I gave it to you. So why you want to ask me what I want to do with it when I take it out?"
Oh man, that's interesting, man. So, I appreciate you for sharing that with us. Definitely. So I'm glad that there's something struck a nerve to where you're thinking for yourself and willing to put the risk on yourself. So I think that's something that you definitely probably feel a bit more, I guess, confident about in the long run, that you took it into your own hands. So.
Right. And one other thing. And I ordered some silver, and I didn't exactly know why. Like I said, I just ordered because I just been kind of just following what you have been saying about silver. But when all this is said and done, you can't really trade it unless you know someone. And if I don't know anyone, but I did take some of that and start buying silver, and I did receive it. But what's the deal with the silver as far as how are you going to be able to buy something with that later on? You got to maybe trade it with coin dealers or something like that, or how's that going to work? You can't just go to the store and exchange it.
Correct. And you would not want to. So good question there. So basically, at the end of the day, from a historical standpoint, gold and silver, at its core essence, has always been considered money. Everything else on top of that is a claim to money. So by you taking some of that physical paper and basically redeeming them for metal, you basically got into metal. So if this is your first time holding silver, in this magnitude, so you basically for the first time might have gotten back into money. So now that to me is a savings mechanism, savings vehicle that you want to sit on through all this monetary storm we're going through. And at the end of that, it's going to be an absorbent of all this stuff that's going on, to where it will be something that you can either directly barter with somebody, or there will be stores or there will be places where they will recognize that, and you'll be able to go do something with that. So, of course, the taxes side of things, we don't know where that's going to be at, but those metals will absorb all of this liquidity stuff that these central banks are throwing out there just by default. And it's called price.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully, did I help you? Did I answer your question, or?
Yes, sir. It did. It did. I'm surprised that someone hasn't. Frankly, I'm surprised that you're still on the air, because with all this going on, with all the conspiracy and the government, and you're talking out like this, frankly, I'm surprised nobody hasn't shut you down yet.
Well,
as far as
I must not be doing. Yeah, go ahead.
The government doesn't want information like this out, so I'm surprised people like you are able to voice that freely.
Yeah, well, I must not be doing that good of a job then if I'm still up and running. So, but no, and once again, this is all my opinion. This is not financial advice. I call it monetary common sense. If people were taught history, they would know the importance of gold and silver, and especially with all the stuff that's going on now, how just from the fact that it's becoming scarce again lets people know the level of importance it has or should have in our lives. So, but it's just my opinion. That's why it's not like I'm out here trying to change the world. I'm just trying to reach one person, and if it happened to be you, I appreciate you for calling and sharing that, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And can I ask one other question real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so like if you have I don't know, say $200,000 in cash just sitting, what would you do with it? I'm sure you wouldn't buy all silver, but you want to keep some in notes. But would you put any in real estate, any in the stock market? Because I thought about buying some stocks, and I was listening to George Gammon talk about putting some in stocks, and But I guess I just want your opinion, because I've been kind of listening to him a little bit too. So I just want your opinion on what would you recommend?
All right. Well, first of all, I'll share with you just a philosophy that I have, and it has to do with what I call the 3 S's, basically spend, speculate, and save. And so out of those 3 categories there, I did a video a while back as to how someone would break down their funds given a number like that. And with those 3 categories there of saving some, the saving portion would, of course, come through redemption back into metals. The spending part would be just basically putting it into use in your daily lives. And then a speculating part is whatever you personally believe in and think that will be an absorbent of this all the liquidity going on and a store of value. So George Gammon, for example, he's a real estate guru. So he believes in, certain types of housing and yacht. Then you have traders out there who trade the markets. And so it's more so whatever you feel comfortable with, because the risk falls on you. But those 3 categories is kind of how I would separate it, to where whatever that amounts to is based upon your risk tolerance. But my personal opinion is, at the end of the day, whatever proportion of weight you have will definitely be a great hedge against any potential losses that come from any of those other 2 S categories as well. Because once again, the price of metals will always go higher as the currency depreciated. So that's just like my little philosophy there. Those 3 S's, I use that as a benchmark for how I would try to do what's best for me, which would be different for you.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps.
Sir. Thank you very much.
But definitely educate yourself in a lot of things that are of interest to you, because you're handling your own wealth now. So, you got to be comfortable when you put your head on your pillow at night.
Right. Yes, sir. I don't understand a lot of what you're saying, but I kind of resonated with certain things. And when you say you don't hold it, you don't own it,
right.
That makes sense to me.
Right. So, all right, my man. Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for calling.
So you are helping somebody.
Well, thank you, kind sir. I appreciate you. Be good.
Okay, sir.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Great call there. Great thoughts. I appreciate that, my friend. So as always, man, it's just me, one guy sharing his thoughts. And of course, the biggest thing is, at the end of the day, the channel's name, Rethinking a Dollar. So it has to do with the fact that the Federal Reserve note, which we've been brainwashed into thinking is a dollar just because it has the word DOLLAR on it, doesn't really mean it's the dollar that was initially rolled out in this country. That dollar happens to be a certain measurement of weight. Look at the Coinage Act of 1792. It'll tell you that. And so let me get this call here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mike. It's Bob from Illinois.
Bob from Illinois. How you doing, my friend? Give me some good news.
Well, everything's going a little better here. There's talk about opening up here in, not here in Illinois, but in Indiana on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's like a progressive thing, but we'll see about that.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I've tried to get on your website, which you have to give your email, and then I'm supposed to get a response from it.
For the chat portion?
No, just when you sign up for it, I got to put my email in, right?
Okay, so for the forum/chat side, yes, this is basically like your typical social media where you just click on log in or register, and then you set your password, then you log right in, and you're good to go.
Yeah, but it won't send me an email.
So I think all you have to do now, once you register, you then just click the login tab, and then you put your own email in, and you put your own credentials that you register with. So it's not going to send you anything. You just use what you already registered with to then log in, and then you can share and add some friends or whatnot if you like. So just use your current email or whatever it is you set up with registration wise when you go log in.
So, okay. So when I go there, just put my email in, and then I should be able to get in there.
Correct. Your email and your password. So whatever the registration part, it just asks you for email and your password, which only you know. You log in with that same information, then you're good to go.
Yeah, but it's telling me that it's going to send me an email to confirm it, but it never does.
Okay, I will look into that, but typically, because more people are being added every day, so I haven't had that. No one's ever presented that issue with me before, so I would say check your spam or check your trash or something like that if it is that. But I haven't heard from anybody about that issue, so I'll look into it though.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong then.
Yep. So check your spam.
I already checked that. There's nothing in there.
Okay. So I apologize for that. So I'll say try another email if you like, and I'll figure it out for some issues. But I haven't heard from anybody else. But I'll look into it. So thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah, maybe it's just me. So all right. Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Be good.
Yep. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Good call there. Sorry for those issues you're having. You have another call here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mike, it's low blood pressure. Corpus Christi, Texas. How you doing?
I'm doing good, my friend. How's Corpus Christi treating you?
It's all right. Friday I'm going to get to go to Burger King, but I have to be like the first 15 people in or I don't get anything,
So there's actual numbers of people allowed in, or what's that about?
Well, that's what they told me. I talked to the guy. He said, look, they're only going to let 15 people in, I guess, so you can have enough space in between people. But everything's supposed to kick off on Friday. Everybody's all excited. It's like New Year's,
Yeah. So officially, I guess this Friday is so like certain restaurants are open, or it's full-fledged what, like parks and stuff, or what?
It's according to what people are saying, but nobody knows anything because I don't even know how the hell they're even enforcing this because the restaurant can do whatever they want. What are they going to do? Arrest them,
Yeah.
But anyway. It's supposed to be this Friday. It's supposed to be bowling alleys, restaurants, places of worship, pretty much everything, as long as you do the spacing or whatever.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see what that looks like, in church where, you got to keep 6 feet. And so like, that's going to definitely, limit the amount of people that can actually be in the building because no matter what, you still have to walk in. So you're going to walk past people. So, yeah, man, this is it's psychological warfare, man. Like they're doing a good job of trying to set parameters. 6 feet here, walk this way, wear a mask all the time, and yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Oh, let me tell you one thing, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh man. Oh yeah. There was a guy. There's a guy. I like to listen to the crazies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a crazy. He's saying that maybe this is I don't know what you call it, like the teaser,
mm-hmm.
and then the real virus is coming pretty soon, the one that's going to be destructive, but they just want everybody to be conditioned,
Yeah.
And then they let the big boy out. What do you think about that?
I don't doubt it, and so let me point you to something also because I put a there's a video, I'll put it up right here that from a doctor out in California, and this is he's talking about. I'll actually put it on the screen, but it says, we are being set up for the biggest October surprise in American history. And what he was hinting at was that come this fall, during the typical weather flu season time frame, he was basically saying that he can see another ramp up of of just illness itself, but yet the hospitals at that point will not be equipped because the hospitals are laying off everywhere now because of there not being enough patients or whatnot, them having more enough staff. So I can imagine that with just the current scare in and of itself just escalating again in 5 months from now, it'll be an issue. So they don't really need to even have a upgraded version of a virus. This current one we have now will scare enough people, especially if the hospitals aren't occupied with enough doctors and medical staff to take care of it. That's gonna be another issue. So, but I think that's part of the setup.
And I tell you, all this craziness, and I'm reading that Bible until I even got the Quran open too. I'm reading them both just in case.
Oh my goodness! Hey man, I will take that as a joke, my friend. I appreciate you.
No, it's not a joke. I really read it.
Oh man, well hey man, I appreciate you calling, man. You be good.
All right, bye. All right.
Be good.
All right, bye.
Oh man, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, man. So we're approaching our 45-minute mark. About to dial back. Wanted to check in, share my thoughts, and so hopefully for those that came late, you might have to go back and watch the first 10 minutes or so where I try to share my thoughts as to how, due to policies, it's going to only further increase the lack of unemployment. Just because, from a fiscal standpoint, people will not want to go back to work, and when it's time to go back to work, they won't be welcome because the corporate side will be restructuring, because they're being overstimulated with all these additional funds. So they will not need to bring back as many people when it's time to actually fully open up the door. So we'll take this last call here, and then we will dial back. Let me get this ongoing call. Oh, got somebody here. Okay, here we go. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's up, Mike? This is Matt from New Jersey. How's it going, man?
I'm doing good, Matt from New Jersey. Give me some good news, my friend.
Things are pretty good here. I have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning to get myself into line to get into Wegmans in order to get food before it disappears later that morning.
Really?
But, other than that, they're enforcing the face mask. I'm wearing the gloves when I'm pushing the shopping cart around. I wanted to ask a hypothetical question to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so obviously we're having this major unemployment crisis, or it's coming down the road, right?
Right.
So let's say President Trump gets reelected, right? And he wants to institute a Made in America policy where he brings back all the manufacturing and production.
Yeah.
Let me pose two questions to that. Would you pay a higher price for everyday goods if it meant one of two things? Number one, more jobs are created in this country, and somebody that is living in one of the poverty-stricken parts of the country can get a decent-paying job to feed him and his family. And number two, it would just be higher quality products, because you walk into a Walmart and 80% of the crap that you buy there is made in China, right?
Right. Whew.
And
okay.
So even with all of this money printing by the Fed, even if, let's say, Trump does win a second term and he decides to bring the jobs back, would you be willing to pay, I guess the question for your chat room too is, would you be willing to pay a higher price if it meant that the manufacturing came back from China and another fellow American who might be poverty stricken can get a decent paying wage for him and his family so they can feed his family?
Yeah.
So that's all I got. That's all I wanted to ask.
All right. Good question there. And I will answer that off air. And I see a couple people in the chat chiming in now. So great thought. And I'll share my 2 cents on the air. Appreciate you, my friend. Good question.
All right. Have a good night, Mike.
Yeah, you too. Whew, okay. That was a very good question. And so of hearing that initial thought, would I be willing to pay a little bit more for what would be hopefully considered a higher quality product that's made in America? So basically, would I be willing to invest in my own country in the rebuilding process? And so my initial thought is, yes, I would love to. But before we get to that point, I see there being a long road to the new norm. I can't even say a recovery, but a long road to the new norm where until the cost of living is dealt with, right now, the United States of America is an extremely expensive country to live in due to just the current monetary system and how it's structured. There's a lot of have-nots haves and have-nots, and the gap there has been increasing ever since. So wherefore, I don't think credit will be first of all, in this next, as the system unwinds, I don't think our primary GDP will be based upon consumption. Our economy is driven 70% by consumption. And it's because credit. So if credit is not readily available, meaning that because no one's going to finance us, if our central bank no longer has a reserve currency, China's not going to be, buying our debt. We will have to live in second world, third world quad style, economics, to where you can't spend more than you have. If you do, you have major issues. Where here in this country, we spend more than we have, and it's no problem because the world supports that for now. But in this next go round, I don't think it's going to be initially easy to get made or to start to made in America here, because we've been conditioned to living and getting paid $20 an hour working on assembly lines. And that next round of whatever is going to come that way, I don't think you can afford to keep a business open to make a product that says made in America at the current cost based upon wages and the demand for extremely high wages. So if we are able to get through that right there to where cost of living goes down, credit is not readily available, therefore wages will have to be a lot lower, and therefore cost of living will be a lot lower. And then, yeah, sure, it'll be easier to make products in warehouses to say made in America. But one of the things I always thought, so my question is, I would love to support it, but two, I don't believe it's going to be that easy. I see it being several years before we see products in stores such as Walmart that says made in America. But I would love to support businesses that says made in America when it's affordable, because once again, if there's competition, as far as China, they're more likely probably going to cut us off. But if China's still around making cheap copycats of that, long as it does the trick for me, especially if I'm not making it a lot like I used to, you're going to go with whatever you get the best bargain, not necessarily quality. So I think we've been conditioned here to accept that cheap crap because it's so cheap and you can have however much you want. But in the next go round, I think once the United States of America is adjusted to the new standard of living here, more second world status for the majority, then I think it'll be easier to do manufacturing here with no problem. But back to my point of me thinking that, like I said, a part of the reset that's underway now is the rising of a new world power or world powers. And so I believe that China, because it's always stated that whoever holds the most weight makes the decisions. And I bet a lot of people here would also believe that China might be sitting on a lot more weight than we supposedly have in Fort Knox at that 8,300 tons. And outside of all the reserves in the ground, the Grand Canyon, Trump is bringing back uranium enrichment here. So, he's trying. So I see some things that lets me know that perhaps he's thinking about the future of this country. Okay. But my point is, I don't think at this current point that we will have the ability to live the quality of life we want to live moving forward without credit. And I think China right now is probably going to spend a lot of those treasuries before the U.S. defaults on them by buying up a lot of real estate, even more so here in the U.S., because it's about to be a fire sale real quickly. And I think China will definitely own a good portion of a lot of stuff here, and they will be reopening up, and they will allow us to make products and then put the Made in America logo on it, because we will make it here, probably working for them or working through them. They'll be financing a lot of the Made in America projects here, and then we will be sending Made in America products to China as the whole credit system flips because of the globalization of the yuan and them opening up their credit markets and doing all the things that we've been enjoying here for the last 80 years. So we're going to be sending Made in America products to China, and then we're going to flood their shelves with all that, what they're going to consider cheap crap or quality crap in their stores, while we're over here living, and the shoe's going to be on a reverse foot. That's all. And so that's what I believe is going to end up happening, to where we will see Made in America again, but it's going to be ran and owned by the Chinese, in my opinion. So, but anyway, that's it. So it is what it is. So let me dial back for this evening. As always, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight and listening to me rant throughout the night. And so for those that came in late, go back to the first 10 minutes or so. I laid out my thoughts for how I believe unemployment is just beginning. And it's unfortunate, but it's a part of this restructuring to this new reset that's being rolled out. So the biggest thing is, my biggest advice would be to take whatever disposable income you are able to set aside. Get rid of those. Get rid of those pesky, unnecessary debts that are small, so you can free up some capital. Get your weight up and then put those funds into things that have chance of producing more cash flow to you so you can then get more weight. So basically, entrepreneurship in this next paradigm will be pivotal, especially if there's no jobs for people to actually have. So they're going to have to basically take the risk upon themselves, like they should already, and not depend upon anybody to tell you what, when, how, but go out and create for yourself. And so anyway, that is what it is. So I saw some stuff here about, let me see. There's a Mike. Yes, I definitely see. See, I saw something about HIV, AIDS, or something like that. Let me see. I missed it, but anyway. So we'll get to that another day. But get your weight up, people. And as always, what the caller was talking about, I want to point to your attention. If you go to rethinkingdollar.com and go up to the very top, you click register. And you can join the chat there. So basically simply here, put your information in here. Everything is done. I can't, it's all done through the software. But then you can go into the chat. And in the chat, I encourage you, if you're a content creator, if you have your favorite YouTubers out there, anything they're dropping is knowledge-based, feel free to post it on your timeline. It's the equivalent of a Facebook, which is done through here. And I don't censor and tell you what you can't say and can't do. It's there's no censorship in there. So, but be respectful. Be respectful of other people in there. We got a nice little good chunk of the community is in there. So don't be left out. But anyway, that is all she wrote. Be blessed, be safe. If you guys want to be a blessed to the channel outside of just giving me your time, if you want to contribute monetarily, consider becoming a part of the Patreon, and then your name will be listed on the RTD Wall of Fame. And I'll show you what that looks like. And so, as always, I like to be able to bless those that bless me. So if you go to the bottom of the page and you get a chance to see all those that have committed to partnering with me and helping me be able to rant the way I do and share and drop little nuggets of information. So consider becoming a patron. Your support would definitely be appreciated. But that is all she wrote for tonight. Peace.